Hey, this is Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com, and today we're going to talk about my first competition and some things that I learned along the way. Okay, so the year is 1993. I'm 13 years old, and at that time, that was the youngest you could compete. The first age bracket was 13 to 14 in the USAPL, and at that time was the ADFPA, drug-tested organization. I was trained by two guys, and I wanted to give them a great shout out on the YouTube channel. Jim Dawson, which was one of the first guys to pull over 700 from Indiana in the early 70s, and Tim Smith, which was a 500-pound raw bencher at 181 pounds body weight in about 1986. Now, the first meet, there's a lot of things that we can cover, but there's going to be a couple big things I think you need to take in advance. Dawson and Timmy would not let me open up with anything even remotely close to what they thought I could max. So what we did is we opened up at 175 pounds. Now keeping in mind, I was going to try to bench 250 that day. Okay, so I'm kind of I think I'm 4 or 5 months into being 13 years old. Long story short is you open up insanely light. So I see so many people when I go to competitions make this massive mistake where they open up way too heavy or something close to their max because they think that their opener matters. The only thing an opener matters for, especially in a beginner level contest, is the fact that you make it feel easy and you develop confidence. Because you got two other lifts after that point that you need to be good at to do well at the meet. The point is that if you walk out on stage and it's your first competition and you're not used to the lights, you're not used to the crowd, you're probably, if you're used to squatting in a normal gym that might have mirrors or anything else, you don't have that type of spatial awareness. You're looking out into a crowd in a gymnasium. The environment's completely different. And one other thing that I noticed that was a big difference in my first contest is that where it was at, the ceilings were immensely high. That messed with my balance a ton because where we trained, the ceilings weren't super high, and we went from being like a 12, 14-foot ceiling to like a 25-foot ceiling. It really kind of messes with your balance. It's going back to my original point. Open up light and get the feel for the environment in the contest and the judging. You got to remember that even if you're in a multiply meet, which we know can be, somewhat lenient on judging, all the way to the IPF World Championships, which are, in my opinion, insane in judging, you're going to have everything in between depending on who the judges are. Most judges and people that come in to help with contests are going to be doing it via volunteer, meaning that you may get in that area people that judge a little loose or judge a little tight. So the point is in the first rep, the opening squat or the opening bench or deadlift, you're really feeling out the environment and the referees and yourself. Now, that's why I have always opened up light. If you've ever seen any of my contests, you'll notice that all my first attempts are just like, bow. They're just super fast, super strong. They almost look like they shouldn't be an opener. And that is to dial in the technique and the environment of that day. So phase one of being a great meat lifter, especially as a beginner, is open up insanely light, okay? Now your second attempt, when you do second attempts, you should be looking at something that is a little bit heavier than that, but is still kind of far away from PRing time. Remember, we're talking beginners, okay? We're not talking advanced lifters that have many years under their belts. We're talking maybe the first 1 to 6 or 8 contests you ever do. Now the second attempt is something to gauge where you are at that day. This is where it gets very complex and very difficult because what ends up happening is in phase 2, you have to understand, or the phase 2 of this video, is that you may not be as strong as you have been that day. It's all about what you can do that day. So the point is like, in the Olympics, think about it in that perspective. They get one contest every 4 years to do their best. That's not easy to do. Powerlifting, if you have a bad meet and a couple weeks later you could do another meet. But let's just say for the sake of saying that we don't want to do that, and it's probably not a good idea. You need to make sure your second attempts are something that gauges of what you have that day. That's probably going to be between 87 and 90% of what your guesstimated max is. Now the reason that you take this calculated jump is because you're trying to secure a total. The big difference is you have 3 lifts. You don't know if those 3 lifts in that day are going to be very taxing. They're going to make you super tired, right? But let's just focus on the squat for this video. If I take a second attempt squat and hit 88, 90%, then what it's going to do is it's going to let me gauge where I'm at that day. So let's just say, for the sake of saying, that 100% of whatever I could do that day, like literally a car battery hooked to my legs, is 315, You might only be capable of 285 that day due to nerves, lack of eating, maybe cutting to get in a weight class. So you have to kind of feel out what you're capable of that day. So phase 1, open up light, and attempt 1, we're opening up insanely light, something that looks super easy. Attempt 2, we're gauging what we think we can do that day, not what we think we could do in the gym, what we can do in that contest that day. If you cut 5-10 pounds off and you're not used to that, could affect your strength by 5-10%. If you're not used to the nerves and maybe the judging, that could cut your strength down 5-10%. So the second attempt needs to be something that you can really lock in and really feel what you have that day. And maybe you feel better. I was always a great contest lifter. So when I went to a contest, everything felt lighter to me. But for a lot of people, it's not that way. The second attempt for me always was something around 90%. Now, once I hit that 90%, remember, we're talking first contest, or maybe the first 5-10 contests. Third attempts, which is your final squat, you should be looking at something that you know you can get, but leave a little bit in the tank. You don't want to fail. And that's step 3. Step 3, when you go to contest, your goal should be 9 for 9. It shouldn't be to hit monster PRs. It shouldn't be to do anything crazy. It should be going 9 for 9. And the reason is you need to develop experience in contests, okay? What ends up happening is if you do a third attempt and it's easy, what do you think happens mentally to your next training cycle? I can tell you. It makes you hungry to get stronger. If you take a third attempt and it is insanely heavy, what you're going to find is it's going to create a mental block. You're going to be like, man, I kind of know where my real max is, and now you're going to remember what that, say, 315 felt like, and now when you go try 325, you're going to be a little nervous of it. Instead, if you just went to your first contest and say you could do 315 and you did 300 even, just to break the 300 barrier, and it was just like, pow, pretty easy, you're probably going to squat 340, 350, maybe even higher the next meet. The thing of it is the first 1 to 5 years that you compete, in my opinion, what you need to do is you need to take third attempts that get you hungry to train harder. And then you'll be stronger than you ever thought you would be in 5 years. But if you truly test your max at contests all the time, you're going to know what your max is, and you're going to create mental blocks at those particular weights. So I hope this video really helped you out a ton to start realizing that if you want to be super, super strong, you need to think long term and you need to keep everything light. Because when you keep everything light and you destroy everything, it makes you hungry to train harder. A time will come when everything becomes difficult no matter what you do. But the first 1 to 5 contests that you do or longer should not be that case. It should be you going in and destroying that particular environment and creating confidence and creating an ability to want to train harder down the road.